So today we are on a topic which I think has importance to every one of us here. And we're going to share with you pages from the High Potential Playbook. Having been a part of TVRLS and the company itself just completing its 30th year, there's so much of knowledge that all of us have accumulated over the years. And so here we are to share a few more pages from our consulting experience. And today we are going to focus on how do we actually go about identifying, developing, and accelerating our organization's highest potential talent. So we have a 45-minute webinar. I'm going to speak for the next 45 minutes, probably a break after 20 minutes, and any pressing questions that you may have. I have my colleague Moshmi here as well. So she's going to make a note of all the questions as you ask. And towards the end, she will make sure that she reads some of those questions. So I look at about 45 minutes of the presentation, post which we'll probably take 5-10 minutes of questions. So what does today look like and what is it we're going to cover? So I have divided the presentation into 3 parts. We're first going to look at a common definition of how do we look at defining a high potential employee. We're then going to look at 2 aspects. One is, what are the elements of identification of a hypo? What is the gating criteria? What is the bare minimum that we need to look at even when we want somebody to enter into the field of being selected as a hypo? And then what do you do with identifying potential? So one is, what is the past performance that we're looking at? And second, what is the potential that we're looking at? And we're going to combine both of these and demystify a little bit of the 9-box matrix, the performance and potential matrix, what is commonly called as the 9-box. And immediately after that, having identified who are the hypos, how do we actually build a nice development program? And we're going to share with you the 3-track approach, which looks at 3 parallel tracks: the track of coaching, the track of mentoring, and also learning. This is broadly what we're going to look at. I'm also going to request all of you as you join, please do share your name and your email ID, because last time in the webinar, we had a little bit of a challenge because we didn't have the email IDs, and therefore we had some of you requesting us for the video recording. So if you can, in the chat, just put down your name and email ID, we'll make sure that a copy of this recording is sent to you in your email. So let's get started as we get into the hypo playbook. And first, let me define a common terminology of who actually is a hypo. The first requirement of any hypo is someone who has been a consistent performer. If you look at every organization who has its own performance management system, we have different ratings. We may have a 6-point scale, you may have a 7-point scale or a 5, or sometimes even 3. And we look at met performance, exceeded, or below. So typically, all those who are above met performance, those who have exceeded, or who are significantly above, they should have got a consistent good rating for a span of 2 to 3 years. Every organization decides what is the span that they are looking at. So past performance is a non-negotiable. But that is not enough. Once you have past performance, does the individual show some capability of higher level competencies? Even in the job that the individual is doing, is there capability to take on higher level roles? This is what we call as potential. And finally, do these individuals have a learning and growth mindsets? So are they continuously investing in their own learning? Do they embrace greater responsibility? Do they take on stretch assignments? Do they do things which are beyond? There are many employees who have patents, who have their own, they go beyond, they assist in organization development activities. So something beyond what the role really requires. These are typically the 3 important criteria that we look at as we identify hypos. Now let's look at what is the process an organization really follows. So you may have a whole set of employees. Maybe just for an example, we look at 100 employees, all of those who have gone through a performance management system. Now what organizations do is they have a gating criteria. And this gating criteria is nothing but number of years that the person has spent in an organization, it could be in a given role, and what have been the ratings in the last 2 to 3 years. So assume out of these 100 employees, you have couple of them who actually have got very good rating and they have been in the company for the required 3 years or 2 years, or they've been in that particular role. They are the ones, as an outcome of the PMS, who move into the next stage, which is a potential assessment through either a potential interview or through an assessment development center. Once the assessment development center is done, and let us say out of these 100 employees, you had 60 of them who qualified to enter into an assessment development center. And out of these 60, 12 of them were found to be high potential. That is where these hypos are then moved into a fast track program or into what is called a development journey. So we're going to go into each of these step by step. But here I would just like to stress on the fact that if we look at these two elements, the past performance and the future capability, past performance is nothing but a passport. So if you want to ever enter into a new country, a passport is almost non-negotiable. But is a passport sufficient? Not really. You need something beyond. So while the passport is good performance in the past or good performance as per the performance management system, what will get you to be considered a hypo is, do you have the potential to perform a stretch job or higher level jobs? That is where we call it the concept of a visa. So all of us will appreciate, to enter into a new country, it is not just past performance, but we have future capability. And this is where the terminology of assessment development centers is introduced. So let me simplify this a little bit more. I thought we would take the example of a school. All of us have been through school. Some of us have kids who are going through school. So I thought a nice example, and to take us back to our early childhood days, is the example. So let me take a riverside school, and to familiarize you with this school, it's a group of schools which has close to 40 CBSE schools, and they also have 5 international, the baccalaureate schools across the 5 southern states of India. Now, they are also looking at expanding, and 6 CBSE and 1 international school is in the pipeline, likely to be inaugurated by May 2027. So each school has typically grades 1 to 12 and an average 75 teachers and maybe 10 administrative staff. Typically, security, housekeeping, and canteen facilities are all outsourced. Now, where does this hypo actually come in? So Riverside is actually wanting to explore how can it identify employees who are ready to be elevated into the role of a principal for some of their new schools, and also as some of the existing principals are likely to retire in the next 1 year, how can they have a pipeline so that whenever there are opportunities, the pipeline is actually developed and you have ready-made talent good enough to take on the next level positions. So how does Riverside actually do this? Let's take a quick look at their structure. So typically, if you see in a school, you could have a governing body or management, the advisors or the board. Below them, for each school, you would have a school principal. Let's call this as an end level. Below the school principal, typically you have academic coordinators. You will have 1 academic coordinator for the primary school, 1 for the middle, and 1 for the high school. Now, just to make this a lot easy, I have taken 3 common names. I've looked at Neha, Ram, and Kishan. All 3 of them are academic coordinators. And below them, you will have teachers and administrative staff. For ease of reference, I'm calling them N-2 level. Now, for example, for illustration, let's look at these 40 schools typically will have 40 principals. You will therefore have 40 into 3, 120 academic coordinators, and you will have many, many teachers and administrative staff. Now remember, we are looking at creating a pipeline keeping a school principal in mind, and also having ready-made talent for the 6 new CBSE schools whenever they are up and running. So therefore, our pool of participants is going to be from the 120 academic coordinators. Now, just for example, let's look at the performance management system of all these 120 academic coordinators. And out of them, we have studied the performance management system. Some of them are barely 6 months into the role. And therefore, the management has felt they really need to understand the role, perform, understand the education sector better before they can be considered for the HYPO program. So the school board put in its own gating criteria. And out of these 120, let's say 20 of them were barely joined couple of months back. So we just have a pool of 100. Out of these 100, if you looked at consistent performance in the last 3 years, maybe just 60 of them qualify. So therefore, out of 120, we have 60 who meet the gating criteria and they fulfill all the requirements which has been put together by the school. Now what happens to these 60? Out of these 60, Neha, Ram and Kishan have also passed the gating criteria and they continue to move to the next level. So the 60 academic coordinators who have qualified go through the next level, which is typically the identification of potential. So what happens on the ground as a part of this process? First, a competency mapping is undertaken for the role of a principal. So what does it actually take to be a successful principal? One studies the role, one looks at what are all the difficult situations, what are some of the most challenging tasks which a principal has to actually take. And on the basis of all the activities and the day-to-day work, top 5 to 6 competencies are identified. These competencies could be in the form of influencing ability, in the form of having a strategic mindset, in the form of being very student-oriented, in the form of having good networking skills outside. We must remember here that a principal has to deal with a lot of complicated issues. He or she needs to deal with the governing board. They need to deal with so many changes in the syllabus from time to time. They need to maybe deal with even irate parents whenever you have the school fees which has increased. So you have a lot of challenges which the principal needs to actually take care. And this is reflected in the 6 or 7 competencies which are arrived at to be a successful principal. Once we have studied the role of a principal, we now design an assessment development center. So what is an assessment development center? We pull out pages from a principal's life and we converted them into a series of exercises. These exercises could be in the form of a gherao by students or by parents where there is a protest that do not increase the fees of the school. Or it could be a student who has got rusticated and, maybe they were caught smoking in a canteen or doing something which is not allowed. And a parent has been called or a parent wants to speak to the principal. Or you could have a presentation which has to be made by the principal in front of the CBSE board. So the exercises could typically be a presentation. It could be a role play between a parent. It could also be a kind of a group discussion. So you will look at all these exercises. You will convert them into a one day where the 60, so to say, academic coordinators, they will be divided into, let us say, 6 groups of 10 participants each. They will go through a one-day simulation of different exercises. Maybe we will add in 1 or 2 psychometric exercise and they will be observed by a group of observers who have no prior knowledge with these 60 academic coordinators. So you could have a consultant, you could have faculty from MBA, you could have psychologists. So you will have multiple observers. So typically for a group of 10 participants, you could have about 4 to 5 observers where every participant is getting observed by at least 2 assessors. And there are multiple exercises for each of these 6 or 7 competencies that we are looking at. It could even be an interview. So imagine an assessment development center where you have multiple exercises, multiple vehicles through which the academic coordinators get a chance to demonstrate what they are capable of. And the observers make a note of all the behaviors. And at the end of it, you come to know who out of these 60 has qualities to take on the role of a principal in the near future. This is the process of an assessment development center. So in terms of the definition, these are nothing but centers set up by the organization for the continuous assessment and development of competencies required for successful performance in a given role. And the most important requirement is multiple exercises, multiple observers, and observers who have no prior knowledge of the people whom they are observing. This is very important so that there is absolutely no bias. And typically, every competency is assessed by at least 2 to 3 exercises. Assessors are often trained in the process of observing, recording, classifying, and evaluating. So here what happens is you have the rating of a performance management system from the organization, but you have the observations of an assessment development center from people who have no prior knowledge, and therefore the potential assessment is free from any kind of biases. This is how you get a final plot of a group of people, and based on the outcomes of the PMS and based on the outcomes of the ADC, this is where you get a list of participants. They are then rank ordered, and the top maybe 10 or the top 15 are then fast tracked, and that is how you get the pool of hypos. So like I mentioned, till now, if you look at Neha, Ram and Kishan, we have data of their performance appraisal. We have data from the ADC. We also have HR who has meticulously been maintaining records, either of their 360-degree feedback or of all the training programs they have attended, or let's say of the patents that they have on their name, or let us say some awards that they have got, employee of the month, or there is something significant that they have done. So imagine you have all these 4 data points. What now happens is you have a talent review council. This is a special team which is constituted and which might comprise, yes, your HR partners. You could have the direct managers, which could be the principals in this case. You will have some people from the sponsor. So it could be board members or it could be from the management committee. And you could have maybe consultants. So let's say you have a talent review council whose only role is to make sure that all the data points, the 4 data points are looked at, evaluated, and they make sure that there is no bias. So let us say out of these 60 academic coordinators who have gone through the assessment development center and who qualify, 15 of them have come out to be someone who are the stars or someone who are the rising stars. So what happens is each of these is actually reviewed, and each one by one, the discussion takes place on ensuring there is no bias, ensuring that there is some evidence, and ensuring that there are discussions on each of them. Now, this is very, very healthy because all the principals, whoever is a part of this review committee, maybe, out of the 40 schools, the senior most principals are joined or they are a part of the review committee. Number one, you come to know clearly who are the people who are very talented, and if not even for promoting them as principals in the future, you may want to use them for special projects which the school has to take. So you get to know a lot of clarity in terms of who is the talent that is there in your organization. So the typical process that the review council follows, they will discuss each employee. Now, based on how many they're looking for, if an organization says, okay, I want 20, then they could look at 20. Maybe they decide they discuss 30 and come down to 20, or they discuss 20 and come down to 15. So they look at any biases. There is a 1 slider on each of them. HR has already got all the data and collated all of it. And finally, towards the end of that 1, 2, or 3 day process, they reach at a consensus, and they may also classify all the talent as to who is really ready, who needs maybe a 1 year program, and who of them is long term and shows potential. So that is how the review council actually looks at assessing each of those. And at the end of it, with the help of HR, this is where a 9-box talent matrix is plotted. Now remember, we started with 120 academic coordinators, but in this 9-box talent matrix, we do not have, if you look at out, we do not have 120, we do not have even the 20, we will only have the output of those 60, and may not even be the 60, it may be the top 20 or the top 30. That is why you will see over here, all the performers, because past performance was something we looked at, the past performance would be something which is already high. So let me just explain this in a simple manner. And what we are looking at is the topmost right-hand quadrant. We are looking at our star, our future leaders, or at best our rough diamond, or the high performer, moderate potential. So based on what comes out, I could look at using these 3 parts of the larger window. The topmost right hand, one below, and one to the left. So let me help you understand this better with the example of Neha, Kishan, and Ram. If you see Neha, she had past performance of 94 out of 100, but her potential is very high in the Assessment Development Center. She has got a score of 80. So she's clearly a hypo, no two things about it. Management has decided that let me not only look at hypos, the star or the future leader, because I also want to look at those who have moderate potential, but they've been very, very hardworking and they have done a good job in the past. So Ram falls in this category with a past performance of 93 and a potential just below Neha of 75. So maybe they are discussed and it is decided, let us look at Neha, let us look at Ram, and let both of them move into the hypo program. Kishan, on the other hand, has got performance which is 90. Now here it looks low, but remember, these are all the people who had got consistent good performance. So if we keep performance on the side, Kishan's potential only has been 69. He has not covered the 70 mark or the 75 mark, and therefore Kishan is not looked at as a part of the hypo program. So this is the way in which the hypos are identified. It is the management discretion whether they want to only work with the star, or whether they want to include rough diamond, or whether they want to include the budding potential, which is the high performer but moderate potential. So this is how management typically plots it in this 9-box matrix. The performance management data, it could be on a 5-point scale, which is converted into 100. The DC data could be on a 6-point scale, which is converted into 100. So you will come to know where do they stand. It is directly on the basis of the data. And if you want, the management committee or the talent review committee adds on the awards. Maybe they say because there is an award the person has got, or because there is something great, then why don't we add and look at moving this person or moving them up or down one particular level. So this is how you get the 9-box talent. And now from Neha, Ram, and Kishan, the hypos have been identified, and only Neha and Ram have been identified, and they move into the next category. Now we move to the third part of our presentation, which is having identified hypos. How do you look at developing them? This is where I want to introduce, based on all the assignments and consulting work we have been doing over the last 3 decades. This is one of the best models that I have picked up for developing hypos, which typically could be over a period of 9 to 12 months. A 3-track approach, which is running in parallel. The first track is nothing but the coaching. The second is the mentoring track. And the third track is a learning track, which deals with classroom sessions, guest sessions, and including a learning diary. So I'm going to go through one by one on each of these and share with you, and also at the end, share with you what could be the possible iterations in developing this kind of a model. So let's focus on the first track, which is the coaching track. So the coaching track has 4 elements. The first element is that of a development dialogue. So immediately after the assessment development center, there is an external coach, or if the organization has an internal coach, there is a 1.5 hour introductory session to help participants appreciate what is the process of coaching. Why this needs to be done here? Because even the IDP discussion follows a coaching principle where it is the participants who will choose what is that one strength that they want to leverage and what is that one area of improvement they feel they want to work around. So once that orientation session on coaching is completed, the coach or the set of coaches, maybe there are 3 coaches or 4 coaches, each of the coach then has a one-on-one dialogue with their coachee, and as the outcome of that development dialogue is a personalized individual development plan. Now, whenever we do an individual development plan, I would like to introduce the concept of 70-20-10, where each of the development plans follows a methodology where 70% of the action plans, whether it is to leverage the strength or whether it is to work around the areas of improvement, is on the job. So it could be learning projects, it could be, attending meetings which are actually not required you to be there, but you are simply attending because you want to learn. It could be any kind of challenging projects which you want to take up. So in one of the assignments we did, one of the project was that this organization had, 50 acres of land which had to be monetized. And the individual or the coachee needed to develop his business acumen. So 3 people were put in a group where 2 of them were very good in their business acumen and one of the individuals needed to learn how to develop his business acumen. So 3 of them worked on the project. They had 2 months time and the CEO was the sponsor. They had to come back and present how can that company make money out of the land which has been lying vacant for so many years. So this is how action learning projects, some people leverage their strengths and some people work around their areas of improvement by looking at how other people think. The next bucket is 20% where you look at coaching and mentoring, typically internal mentors and maybe external coach. And only 10% is formal learning, which could be in the form of YouTube videos, in the form of books to read, in the form of articles, or you are looking at targeted workshops. So once you have an IDP which follows the 70-20-10 philosophy, this is backed by a series of coaching connects. So you could have a 3 to 4 coaching connects in intervals of 2 months. Now, typically, what we would do is a coaching connect in month 1, and the mentor would meet once a quarter. So you would have an internal mentor, which I will come to later, but we did it in such a way that we did not load our participants such that they had not more than one activity which was taking place in a month. So we would have a series of coaching connects, where in every coaching connect, we would look at the progress that the individual has made. We would review the actions on the IDP. We would explore new actions. We would look at hurdles. We would look at reflection by the participant and ask him or her to share what would they want to take up between now and the next coaching connect. We would also use this to ensure that there is accountability and progress. So we would ask them, do you have an accountability partner? So if you are unable to do this, who will remind you? Or if you are able to do this, how are you going to celebrate? So we would look at all of these in the coaching connects. They serve as fantastic ways to remind the person. And even if someone has fallen off the horse, how do you help them get back and continue on the journey? Now, we wouldn't stop at that. We introduced a concept which was called pods. Now, if you look at, pods, typically you could have peas, peas, pod, typically peas of a pod, that's what you would call. So you would look at a group of 2 to 3 people who would, by choice, come together maybe 30 minutes once in a month. Why did we introduce this? Because research has shown us that there is a 5-time increase in the success rates of IDPs when you look at new habits with a support group. So all of you might appreciate, even sometimes when you're trying to lose weight and you have a friend who's with you on that journey, the reminders, the inspiration that each of you can give each other is priceless. So PODS is nothing but a form of peer coaching where groups of three meet. And what do they meet on? They will have a monthly rotation, a leader who makes sure that the meeting happens. They will share their action plans. They will look at processes. They'll talk about the challenges. And sometimes they will just meet each other and have a good time. So in one of the recent assignments that we did for a client in UAE, it turned out this was a food and beverage organization. The pods turned out creating so much of collaboration between the HODs. So before pods, they didn't really understand what was happening to each other. But after pods came about, they started meeting in a restaurant over a weekend. And they started talking about family. They started talking about personal challenges. And the kind of camaraderie that they built was really priceless. So pods is something which is a form of peer coaching, which really builds a lot of momentum. And it's a big contributor in making sure that hypos learn from each other and hypos are forced to relook at their action plan. And finally, we ended the coaching journey with a presentation called Looking Back and Moving Forward, where at the end of the 12 months, each leader made a 30-minute presentation summarizing what did that journey mean for them, what were the kind of books, what were the new habits, what did they stop doing, what were the key achievements. Now, the interesting part of this is presentations are made in the presence of their own peers, the other hypos, in front of the mentors, which are typically internal and senior organization leaders. They take inspiration as they hear each other's progress, and they are also inspirational as they share their journey. Mentors and seniors also comment and say, yes, I saw you change over the last couple of days. Yes, I could make out the effort you have done. Kudos, there is a visible change. So this is how the entire coaching track, comprising the 4 elements of development dialogues, 4 coaching connects, pod discussions or peer coaching, and having a final effort review to close the entire hypo journey. Now we have a second track, which is the mentoring track, where internal mentors who have been trained in mentoring. Now it could work both ways. Some of the clients that we have worked with, especially IT and ITES, they have their own internal portal where a mentor who has been trained or who has done some course can actually volunteer and also share which are the areas they would like to mentor. In such a situation, hypos have the chance to study the mentors and choose and send out a mentor request form. Or alternately, the mentor and mentee can, in an organization, touch base with each other and decide what will work for them. So this is how the mentoring track works. The advantage of having internal mentors is very important. They know the IDPs. How does it work in the culture of the organization? So because they have the experience and because they are well versed in the specific area that the mentee is trying to work on, they can culturally ensure it is suitable to the organization that they are working on. So if you actually look at it, the mentor and the coach are helping the mentee in the same way. It is just one may not be that culturally, customized, whereas the mentor helps the mentee ensure it is culture sensitive. So that is where you have the mentoring track. And finally, the last track, which is the learning track, where assume you have 15 hypos. We study the IDPs of all the hypos, and suppose it turns out all of them need to know how to influence better. They need to know the art of storytelling, or they all need to have effective decision making, or their leadership style needs, or emotional intelligence is what needs to be developed. Imagine you have bite-sized training programs, half-day workshops, once every month, where each of these topics is taken up and all the 15 leaders go through those. They are also looking at augmenting their IDPs, and they have a learning diary where they jot down what are all the learnings that we have accumulated. If they have read something, they note down what is the learning out of that particular reading, what is the learning out of the YouTube video, or if they have attended the training program, what are the top 3 action plans they want to take up because of the training program that they attended. Now, we don't just stop at the training programs. You could also invite guest lectures and have guest sessions They could be entrepreneurs because it's a virtual platform. You could have other professionals from non-conflicting industries. You could learn from anywhere. One of the organizations that I had the privilege of doing the Hypo program for, they had a whole series of inputs. They had, a guru like a Swami Subbodhananda coming and talking about how do you deal with stress, because this was a company in construction where tempers used to flare a lot and a lot of youngsters were getting blood pressure problems. So it was a need of the hour to look at diet. Also, many of them didn't know how to communicate well. So they had Sabira Merchant, who, is a very well-known icon in the world of communication. She came and did a program on etiquette and speaking right. You had, maybe a Harsha Bogle coming and doing on collaboration and high-performing dreams. So they curated an entire program where they called very eminent speakers. In other organizations, we have ourselves at TVRLS done the program. So we had one on effective delegation. We did a program on emotional intelligence. We did a program on leadership style inventory. We did on critical thinking. We did on design thinking. So it depends on what is the mandate and what is it the organization wants to do. So this really helps participants develop a much stronger outside-in perspective. So this is how the entire training track, learning track, and the Hypo program actually looks at how the entire thing is implemented. So I'm going to stop here. It's sharp 7:15. So as I have committed, I know post that many of you will start moving out. So I said it's bang on time. We start on time and close on time. So I'm going to just continue the question now that Moshmi had asked. So some of the elements of coaching, for example, yes, I see Neeta Sherali here. Neeta, you're an PCC coach, right? So you're a PCC coach. Mosh is a PCC coach. I am. So for many of our clients, they request you to be an ACC or a PCC coach. Otherwise, they don't allow you. Even in some of our, when we want to, there is a requirement that you must have some international accreditation. So even if you want to do a psychometric, you have to be MBTI accredited. So some of these are consultant dependent. So, unfortunately, we can't do anything, but we have noticed over the years, especially post-pandemic, many of our participants are investing a lot on their own training. So I think somewhere that will be non-negotiable, or if you have employees who are trained in some of these, you will have to. Even mentoring, we feel a lot of people do it, but when we do mentoring workshops, we realize that many of them are doing the wrong thing. So some amount of learning, some amount of focused inputs is a must before you, start doing it, because you can create damage if you have not trained yourself on it. So that is important. And, for anything, domain knowledge is a must. Then the more you practice, the more you will be able to do a better job and it will come effortlessly to you. But some investment in upgrading, some knowledge is a must before you enter into it. So this is, partially I had answered it and partially I did not. So unfortunately, for some things, you can't do away with consultants. But I think if you are well equipped, you can get the best out of consultants. And eventually, yes, some of those like an MBTI or, whichever other tools, you may have to invest in some amount of a certification. Prof, anything you would like to add? Anything I may have missed out? Geeta, lovely to see you. You can also add, Geeta has also partnered with us on so many assignments. So, and she's been a part of the journey for Hypo so many times. So Geeta, anything you would like to add?
No, just I think the pods is a brilliant idea, honestly,
Yes.
because that gives that kind of empowerment and energizing space that one needs. And for me, that really stood out, honestly. Brilliant idea.
Yes, this was something we learned from Coach Shehzada's positive intelligence. So he has introduced this entire concept and we started using it. We learned and we immediately practice it in our coaching. So we at TVRLS itself had pods. So I had a pod with Rama, Moshmi, me, and another colleague of mine, Parina. So, we did quite a lot of that. So I'm just going to request all of you, if you have forgotten, please do put in your name and your email ID. That's very important because we don't get to know otherwise who wants the recording and therefore we may not be able to send it. So if any one of you have forgotten to put your name and email ID, now is the time. I would please request you to do that.
Nandini, there are a few more insightful questions that we have received in the chat box, and maybe you would want to explore. One is about the 9-box matrix. I think Professor Rao has actually given his insights. Would you also want to share a little bit? So it says that since the 9-box matrix is plotted internally, how can we reduce biases in assessing performance and potential? So for potential, would you recommend external assessors or internal evaluation would be better?
So that depends on the culture of your company. Many people I have seen are not happy with their own performance management system, and they do feel it is very biased. So if you have a biased kind of a system, then it is always good to have external, because you don't want to start with a feeling that, you don't want to create dissonance amongst all those who have not got selected. So there I feel it is the culture of your company that will dictate, are you okay to use an external or do you need to go internally? Second thing, one of the biggest challenge I've seen with internal people is they do not have time, because very often internal people, this is over and above what they do. This is not the only thing they do. So it is your normal HR responsibilities plus this. An assessment development center is very, very time intensive. You will need to do a lot of things. You'll need to spend a lot of time. So one full day for assessing, and you will need another 1-2 days for creating the report. So therefore, if the culture is not such that your PMS is very, very robust, people don't have review discussions, there are no rater evaluation communities even for your PMS, then I would suggest don't, because you are going to create a lot of dissonance and you will create more ill will. Therefore, I think it is better at such a time than to go with external. But if you have very, very good systems and you have trained people and you have people with some bandwidth who can do the assessment development centers, then make sure that, let's say, figure out that they are at least 3 levels above and they don't have any prior knowledge of some of these hypos. So confidentiality and lack of prior knowledge, which doesn't allow you to get biased, is a must. As long as those conditions are met, I think it's perfectly fine.
I think we have another question. Would you be able to take that? Should I
maybe
do that?
last question. And
Okay.
then I'm anyway going to share all of you will have our email ID. It is tvrls@tvrao.com. So feel free to post your questions over here, and I will try and make sure that me, Maushmi, Ravi, or Prof, or Dr. Raju, we will make sure that we answer your questions. So go ahead, Mosh. What is the last question you want me to take?
So it's from Leslie, and she's asking, should there be self-nomination? I think that's for hypo.
Yes.
Self-nomination, or should the department heads nominate? There could be a biases when department heads nominate. So
yeah, so you know what? It's a gating criteria that you have put. So it doesn't matter whether you nominate or whether the HOD nominates. If you fulfill that criteria, you have every right to go through it. So most important is on the portal, publish the criteria. Self-nomination is best because HODs are already struggling. So you don't want them to put more work. So it is very good, and maybe you can ask them that create a small one slider on why do you think you want to, or why do you think you should become an hypo. So let them, and here it is, the gating criteria should be so clear that there are no two things about it. Even if a system or AI has to pick up, you are in a position to know who exactly needs to go through for the next level. So ideal is if you can publish, and before that HR should also know who is kind of getting in. So put a gating criteria, allow for nominations. And if there is someone, let us say there are 1 or 2 people who just don't fulfill, but the HOD thinks very strongly, that has to be taken off the books, discussed, and then figured out. So self-nomination works well, but gating criteria will make sure that, that will not happen. Okay, so you won't have any issue on it.
Can I just add also, Nandini?
Yeah, go ahead, Neeta, go ahead.
So I believe that there are so many checkpoints, right, where bias is sort of eliminated. And, all of the tracks that you spoke about, each track has a checkpoint,
yes,
which eliminates sort of bias. So just to be aware of that.
Yes. And you have the talent review committee. Now, what's the chance? And the talent review committee is a very heterogeneous group. They are unlikely to all think alike. So imagine you have the management board, you have HR, you have so many others. So if you have a heterogeneous group, which is likely to have divergent thinking and not necessarily convergent, you will make sure that all the data points are thrown up and people are therefore able to discuss. So that is why it should not be dependent just the managers. If just the HODs were there and they were making the decisions, you could have biases. My people, I want to make sure my department, because many HODs want to make sure that they are motivated because they can't motivate through other methods. So at least hypo is identified. So there are enough checks and balances where we looking at all of this. All right. So I will make a note of all the other questions, but thank you so very much for being a part. I know today's a holiday and we didn't realize when we were doing this that it's a holiday. Otherwise, we would have pushed it to another day. And we know many people because we got significant out of office responses to our blocking their calendars. But nonetheless, great to see all of you. And we look forward to seeing you in our next webinar. Stay tuned for the topic and the date. And thank you so
Should we
very
take
much.
a quick photo, Nandini?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely,
It's always
Mosh.
nice to
Many
take.
have
Can I
logged
request
off.
all?
Yes,
Yeah.
but let's quickly do that. Nice of you to remember.
So
Can
I
we all
request
turn
all of
on
you to
our
open? Yeah.
yes, it will be fantastic. All won't come in one screen, Mosh. You'll have to take it in two.
No, this is possible. I think I'm
Okay.
able to capture
Okay.
everything, but can I
Okay.
request all of you to please, open your videos, please? Yes.
Tell us when to smile, Mosh.
Sure. I'm still waiting for some of you to open it up, but then I'll quickly take it. Okay. So say cheese. Okay, let me just take the picture and just a second. It's always nice to take 2 pictures in case if somebody close their eyes. So once again. Okay. Great, Nandini. I'm good. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you all. I was replying to some of the questions on the chat box. So
Yes.
good, Nandini, good, well presented.
Thank you, Prof.
One more test.